Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and I'm the Astro Chick, and today I'm going to do the horoscopes for the 12 rising signs for Gemini season. I'm glad that I get to do my first horoscope video for Gemini season because I'm a Gemini, so it seems very fitting. But we're also going to focus on the year-long square between Jupiter and Gemini and Saturn in Pisces, something to look at and be very aware of because it involves tension and conflict, and adjustments that we need to make. We're also going to look at the trine to Pluto and Aquarius from Jupiter and Gemini, and that's more short-lived, but it could be a very powerful type of trine, makes it transformation easy. So the growth orientation and the transformation means something is going to change at a very rapid pace. Um, Even though I'm only specifying, those two aspects, I'm going to say really quickly about the ingress of planets during Gemini season. So the sun's already there. Venus is going into Gemini today. Then we have Jupiter on the 25th, Mercury, I think, on the 3rd of June. Then we have the new moon in Gemini on the 6th. So, by the first week of June, we're going to have six, five planets in the sign of Gemini. Superpowered Gemini, right? So wherever that house is in your chart, think of the growth orientation that Jupiter is going to bring to it for a whole year, and also all the other planets coming into the sign of Gemini is going to activate and highlight that area of your life. So, keep that in mind as we go through the rising signs, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get to it. Aries rising. So Mars is your chart ruler. It's the driving factor in your chart. And Gemini happens to be your third house. The third house is the house of everyday environment. It's our communications on a daily basis. So the things we do every day: talk to neighbors, talk to siblings, make short trips to the store and post office. It's the busyness of every day, right? It's also the third house is the moon's joy. And if you think about it, the moon is the fastest moving celestial body. It's very busy, taking care of everything. So that's kind of the vibe of the third house. Um, Jupiter going into Gemini in that third house could really expand your everyday environment. It could make everything get really busy, really full, right? And the square that Jupiter's making to Saturn, and Saturn's in your 12th, in that Pisces 12th house, it could point to not necessarily having the time, the isolation time that you need right now because of your busy life. Because remember, the square is where we need to adjust ourselves. The square is about working, having to adjust and work things. So it could be that the square between Jupiter and Saturn points to, having a very busy everyday type of environment and not having the time to really isolate yourself and go into that unconscious kind of state. Like, make sure you get enough sleep, make sure that you know, get a routine that works for you, right? Because it's not to say that because your everyday is so busy that you'll never have time for yourself. You got to make the time, okay? So that might be part of that square adjustment energy, is that you have to like rearrange things so that your needs are met, okay? Now, the short-lived trine between Jupiter and Pluto involve your third house and your 11th house. Third house, you know what that is, I just told you. The 11th house is the house of good spirit. So it's a wonderful house. It's very social. It's about friends and associations, but more so in groups, right? Groups of people, like also networking, okay? Acquaintances. It's also the house of like aspirations. So hopes and dreams, okay? It's the place where we see more, right? We can do more in a group than we can on our own. So it is a happy place, right? Third, 11th trine, it could mean that because your everyday is filling up, it fills up with association. Perhaps all these people that you're meeting, they're part of your everyday kind of life. You're talking to people, you meet new people every day. That could be the vibe, because it doesn't last very long. but watch and see if that's the effect for you. What else did I want to look at? Just the fact that Mars is still the ruler of the North Node until the nodes ingress into Pisces and Virgo. So let's see, Mars right now is in Aries, and it will be going into Taurus on the 9th of June. And, perhaps some of that ecliptic energy will be stabilized because, once again, the Aries eclipse that came through, Mars was the ruler of that. So your main planet was the ruler of that ecliptic energy. So we still have some reverberations from all of the craziness that we've been experiencing from that eclipse, especially Americans or people ruled by Mars, right? But with Mars ingressing to the sign of Taurus by the 9th of June, hopefully that's going to stabilize a lot of that drive that you've been revving up. Taurus rising. So, Venus is your chart ruler. That's your driving factor. Venus is the ruler of the South Node right now. Okay, so that's been, interesting because Venusian things have been taken from us. The South Node is the principle of decrease, right, or loss in some way. And we have a solar eclipse in Libra this fall. Okay, so Venusians, the year's not done with you. So let's see, Gemini in your chart would be the second house, the house of possessions, value, money. That's where all our stuff is. It's a corporeal type of house. It's our things. And so Jupiter coming into the second house, who doesn't want Jupiter in the second house? It's going to expand all of that, expand your possessions, expand your value. It's a good time for investments. Depending on the rest of your chart, you really should get an astrologer to kind of look at the power of your planets and see how it's working for you. But very, very good and auspicious to have Jupiter coming into the second house. It's going to be there for a year. Okay, so if you have anything in Gemini, check that out. You have anything in any of the mutable signs, that is going to directly affect that placement of Jupiter in that second house. So good luck to you all. So we have the trine between Jupiter and Pluto. Pluto is in the 10th house. So second house, your stuff, your money, your things, your value. 10th house, your success, your career, your reputation. Trine is an easy aspect, very harmonious. Perhaps a change, right? Because Pluto's about the transformation process. It's also about power. Perhaps there's a transition going on in your career or in your reputation that could lead to more money, right? Because that 10th second house trine, it does have to do with success. It has to do with the money you can gain from your status in the world. So that's a good thing for you. And then we have the square, that year-long square between Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn in Pisces is in your 11th house. Now, ultimately, this is Mercury going fast. Mercury, I'm tripping over my words, so this is Mercury buzzing, okay? Anyway, your 11th house is a good house. It's the house of good spirit. It's association, groups. It's your dreams and wishes as well. So, maybe the square between the 2nd and the 11th has to do with needing to adjust your aspirations, your hopes, your groups, your network, all that kind of 11th house stuff because of money situations, okay? Maybe you're expanding too much, okay? Jupiter and Saturn, they work together in the having too much, not having enough. It's like expansion, contraction, okay? So you might feel with the square between the 2nd and the 11th, you might feel a tug, like a push and pull with as far as like my possessions versus, the groups that I associate with, or having too much in association with wanting to have things because you have the trine that's bringing in some success or a transfer, a transformation of successes in the world. And then here you have Saturn, which is more limiting in that house of association. So maybe you have to do the job on your own a little more, Maybe you have to adjust the people that you work with on certain projects because obviously your 10th house is changing. So that career, like your place in the world is changing. So you might also have to adjust your groups. It's a thought. Gemini rising. So obviously Jupiter is in your first house, the house of self, body, appearance, image. Okay, it's you, babe. Jupiter expands everything. So this means you could be a bigger person, literally, like watch that sweet cream, okay? Also, you might want to know more about yourself. We're talking Gemini, so Mercury is the ruler of your chart, okay? And Jupiter expands knowledge when it's in the sign of Gemini, or it's in the sign of Mercury. So that expansion of knowing something. Also, the trine occurs with the ninth house. So Pluto in Aquarius is in your ninth house. The ninth house is associated with like long distance journeys, education, like higher education, faith orientation, morality, but also just a sense of like adventure and journeying and discovery, right? The trine between Jupiter and Pluto could point to you taking trips to expand yourself, right? Going places, meeting foreign people, learning culture, learning different ways of life, experiencing things on a broader, in a broader way. Because that ninth house for you naturally is Aquarius, so it's ruled by Saturn. So you might not be the kind of person that. But I have to say, my girl, it depends on your Saturn. Okay, before I get off on a tangent, I'll just say this: I have a Gemini rising friend. She loves traveling. She loves going places. You really should look at the Saturn in your chart because Saturn in your chart, being the ruler of your ninth house, can tell you kind of how you react to situations of travel or discovery or faith orientation, that kind of thing. So the girl I know, though, she loves to travel. She's always going places. She's big on adventure. Okay, so that easy trine between Jupiter and Pluto can mean more trips. It could be, learning, becoming more of, I would have to say, like citizen of the world. You know what I mean? That's a good thing. Now the square occurs. Saturn is in your 10th house. Okay, and the 10th house is your career, your reputation, your power, your status, right? Saturn can be limiting in some ways. So the square could point to, you wanting to be a bigger person yourself, wanting to have more of yourself. And then Saturn is limiting your position in the world. So having to adjust who we are versus what the world sees in us or what we give to the world, what we invest in our jobs, because the 10th is a working house, right? So putting our face on a product, right? Or making ourselves have to adjust our relationship with work versus ourselves, especially that trine to the ninth. You probably want to go on a vacation. Like Gemini rising is like, look, I'm putting in my PTO right now because I got a cruise, right? Or I'm going to Jamaica or something. So you might have a bit of conflict with the responsibility of your job versus your desire to go out and just travel and have a good time. Cancer rising. So the moon is your driving factor. You have Jupiter ingressing Gemini in the 12th house, which is the house of isolation. It's, often associated with loss and sickness. The 12th house is not a happy place at all. I can't foo-foo it. It's oftentimes when we have a 12th house perfection, I know in my own experience, they've never been happy years. They've always had a lot of turmoil, grief, loss, and yeah, 12th house isn't fun. So with Jupiter going there, it's going to expand your solitude. It's going to expand that isolation that you're stepping into, right? The 12th house trining that 8th house Pluto, it could point to maybe your isolation is a direct effect of taking care of someone else, right? The 8th house is associated with other people's stuff. like taking care of other people, also legacy and inheritance. So maybe you have a sick relative that you're taking care of right now. It's easy to be in isolation when you're at a hospital or you're taking care of someone who's sick. You're pulled away from the world and everything else. The square between the 12th house and the ninth house, so the square between Jupiter and Saturn, which lasts over a year, you guys, could really point to needing to find faith in what it is you're undertaking. So if you're undertaking care of someone else, or you're undertaking solitude and isolation in some way for a purpose, you know, I would say like rectifying the need to venture out. The ninth house is associated with travel, but also it's associated with faith and God and our morality, our ethics. So maybe there's an inner tension between what you should do and what you want to do, right? And with the Jupiter-Saturn square, often there's a comparison that we do, because Jupiter's optimistic and big daddy, and he's happy and he's good, and then Saturn is often seen as limiting and the old man, and very negative, right? And just a restrictor of some kind, the authority, right? But really, Jupiter's authority too. But we see Saturn in the sense of like the schoolmaster, right? So that tension could be between wanting to be a jovial person, happy, but really feeling the heaviness of the situation, especially if you're taking care of someone that's sick, right? It could also be just taking care of your own stuff. Maybe you're sick, but the eighth house is often associated with other people. So that ninth house square between, Saturn's in your ninth, Jupiter's in your 12th, it could just really point to an inner conflict between wanting to go out and explore, or journey of some kind, but really having it's going to have to be an inner journey, because that 12th house is a place of isolation. So I wish you well, and just hold on to your faith. Like, praying might be something that brings you some clarity to what it is that you have to achieve at this time. Leo rising. So the sun rules your chart. It's your driving factor. We have Jupiter in Gemini in the 11th house, the house of friends and groups, associations, networking, also hopes and wishes and dreams. Great house, right? 11th house is the house of good spirit. Jupiter in that house is going to expand all of that stuff. So you might have an expansion of networks, an expansion of friend groups. You might have a burst of hopeful intention and um, more aspirations, more dreams. Like, who doesn't want to dream big, right? Dream big. That's a really good phrase for Jupiter in the 11th house. So Jupiter will trine Pluto. Pluto is in your 7th house. The 7th house is relationships, it's contractual agreements, but it's also your others, right? Whether it's a spouse or a partner, like business partner, it's a house of exchange. So the trine between Jupiter and Pluto could point to like easy flowing friendships, meeting someone in a group and perhaps they become one of your best friends, right? Or just the associate, also meeting new others as far as partners. Maybe you get into a new friend group and you meet the love of your life. I'm just saying it's possible, right? That trine energy is it doesn't hold on very long. It's like a couple days, maybe a week, and then it dissipates. So, beginning of June, like the first week of June, is when you should really be concentrating on that trine between Jupiter and Pluto. So what else do we got here? We've got the square between Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn in Pisces is in your 8th house. Your 8th house is a place of inheritance, legacy. It's your bonds with other people, like deep bonds, like blood and gold, right? So the square could be the inner tension between your responsibility to others, right, and your aspirations, okay? Maybe you're dreaming to get away from the responsibilities or the bonds that you have with specific others, because Saturn can be seen in a negative light as a restrictor or as a limitation of sorts. You know, it could be that your obligations to others is restricting your hopes and your dreams. Okay? I mean, that's just language through archetypes. It's, with a square, remember, squares are working energy, so you have to adjust. Okay? Maybe you have to adjust your hopes and dreams according to your obligations. Maybe you have to adjust your obligations according to your hopes and dreams, right? Like, that's up to you how you do that. But it is interesting because always choose you, right? Always choose you. Virgo rising. So Mercury is your chart ruler, your driving factor. And we have Jupiter and Gemini at the midheaven in your 10th house. 10th house is associated with career, reputation, success. Okay. Jupiter ingressing to that house is an expansion of that. So an expansion of the work that you do in the world. Okay. An expansion, a growth in your reputation as a person, as a professional, perhaps. What it is that you do in the world maybe grows, maybe position, your job title, expands. Okay. And sometimes it's good and sometimes not, because they love to expand our job titles, but they don't necessarily give us money for it. Like, that's a trend of the now. So I hope you get that raise along with that title. Okay. The trine between Jupiter and Pluto. Pluto is in the 6th house. Now, the 6th house is not a happy place. It's very similar to the 12th in the sense that they're connected through an axis, right? The 6th is the house of bad fortune, all right? It's often a house of servitude. It's where we have to work for others. Sometimes we work for no pay. It's really a place of mission, right? And it's a place where we gotta do the hard stuff, right? Pluto being in that house, it can point to the fact that in order to grow your position, to expand your reputation, you're going to be able to work harder. You're going to be able to do things, to give of yourself in ways that prove that this is a mission. It's not just a job. You could get really, really exacerbated by the fact that you have to work so much, right? That expansion quality, but you're learning so much. Like, you're learning how to work probably smarter, faster, right? Pluto is a transformer. So Pluto's changing the way that you work, maybe. Maybe you're working smarter, not harder, okay? Which there ain't nothing wrong with that, right? Especially if you are then excelling in the job that you're doing. So that's all good stuff. Now, the square between Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn is in your 7th house of relationships. So that inner tension might be because you're expanding in your job, because your reputation and perhaps your responsibility as well. Because usually more pay, more money, more problems, right? So perhaps your obligation to work is in conflict with your obligation to your partner, right? The 7th house is our others, it's our relationships, it's our one-on-one. It's also our contractual relationships. So maybe you have a contractual issue that you have to mend or change in order for you to get that growth in your job. It's interesting to think about. Libra rising. So your chart ruler is Venus. Venus is your drive, okay? Venus is also currently the ruler of the South Node. And you should remember we have a solar eclipse this fall with the South Node in the sign of Libra, which is your sun sign. Just be aware of that, okay? And so Jupiter going into Gemini is your 9th house. The 9th house is the house of travel, long distance journeys, higher education. It's also the house of God and faith, morality and ethics, right? So you're going to expand this area. This area of your life is going to expand. So maybe you're going to college. Maybe you are going on a trip to expand your experience, right? To have more of a worldly knowledge. Maybe you're being cultured in some way. So the ninth house is opening up and growing for you. The trine to Pluto, Pluto's in your fifth house. The fifth house is a wonderful place. It's the house of good fortune. It's the house of creativity. It's also the house of children. I know not everyone nowadays has children, but we create our children, right? But we also create art. We create joy, right? It's a yummy house. It's really a good house. Having Pluto there speaks to the changes that are occurring in that fifth house. Okay, so the trine between Jupiter and Pluto could point to an easy flow of having a good time by traveling, right? Changing up your plans and exploring the world. A trine between the fifth and ninth house is extremely fortunate, and it holds adventure, right? Good times and adventure for you. It's a short-lived one, so if you're taking a trip like the first week of June, perfect, right? Now the square in your chart between Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn is in your sixth house. The sixth house is not a very happy place. It's the house of bad fortune, but it's also the house of service. It's the house of subordinates. You could see it as a house of illness, but it's more like the work that we do that we don't get paid for, right? It could be a house of mission, but it's usually something that we work very dedicated in a very dedicated way towards, okay? So Saturn being there in square to Jupiter in your ninth house, it could point to the inner tension between the work that you do for other people for nothing, right? And your expansion of your experience in the world. Maybe you have to work a job that you don't get paid at in order to build your resume. Maybe you have to contend with the responsibilities you have and the services that you provide versus the your need to expand your experience in the world, right? Maybe your job is holding you down. So part of that square energy is like it's a stimulating factor. It makes you need to change, okay? So the square can help you to rectify, the growth versus the limitations that you're experiencing between the work that you give and the journey that you must also experience. Okay. Scorpio rising. So, Mars is your chart ruler, your driving factor. Mars is still the ruler of the North Node. So, also, Mars was in charge of all of that ecliptic energy that we had in April. So, it's a wily energy. Mars isn't going to go into the sign of Taurus until um, like the 1st of June or something. Like maybe it's the end of June, maybe it's the 17th of June. Maybe it's mid-June is what I'm thinking. Sorry, guys, my mind was going. But perhaps when Mars goes into Taurus, it's going to stabilize that erratic ecliptic energy that is lingering with Mars, right? Until then, we have Jupiter ingressing Gemini in your 8th house. The 8th house is that house of inheritance, other people's stuff, also legacy, right? So, and remember, the 8th house is a water house. It's very, I say water house because it's associated with signs, but I know not everybody does that. But the 8th house is a place of isolation. It's a hidden house. The 4th, the 8th, and the 12th are all hidden places. So, you're going to possibly expand some kind of transformational process that's happening within you in consideration of like the bonds that you have with others, okay? Because that 8th house is about the bonds we have with others in blood and gold, like the inheritance. Also, when we have children with other people, like child support is associated with the 8th house as well. So Jupiter expanding that house could mean that you have a transformation in progress. Maybe you have more issues when it comes to inheritance or taking care of other people's things. Maybe you're taking care of more and more and more for people that you have bonds with, okay? So the trine to Pluto, Pluto's in your 4th house. So this makes sense. The trine is easy, harmonious energy. It makes it easy for these planets to have a relationship, right? Pluto is the transformative energies, right? And it's also about power. 4th house is your home, your family, your roots, where you come from. That 4th house is also a very private place, right? So yeah, whatever you got going on, Scorpio rising, it has to do with your home, your family, maybe taking care of your family, maybe taking care of other people's things, and now you're having to take care of more of your family, okay? The square between Saturn's in your 5th house. So once again, that conflict, that inner tension between your responsibility and obligation to other people and the restriction that it puts on your good time, because that 5th house is your creative nature, your joy, right? So yeah, taking care of other people, it can be a lot, especially if it's expanding, then you're having to do more and more and more. And that could come into direct conflict with the things that you want to enjoy, right? Because it's hard to enjoy things for ourselves when we have many obligations to other people. So that square can be worked where you have to adjust your creative nature versus and also adjust the responsibilities and obligations that you have to possibly people in your family that you take care of. Okay, so hang in there, man, hang in there. Sagittarius rising, my fave. Of course, I'm biased because it's my own rising sign, but I have to say, I have a tribe of Sag rising people at my cosmic shop. We thought about renaming the business Sag Rising, but no, we're not going to do that. Anyway, Sag Rising people, Jupiter is our drive, so we tend to be very optimistic. Even in the face of adversity, we still keep plowing through with that optimism that we can do it because we know we can do more in the world. Anyway, so Jupiter rising, Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius rising with Jupiter are the ruler of our chart in the 7th house. So we're going to expand our relationships. We're going to expand our base of partnerships and the people that we have we exchange with. Also contractual agreements, because the 7th house is associated with contracts and legality in some ways. So the trine between Jupiter and Pluto occurs between the 7th and the 3rd house. The 3rd house is the house of communications, okay? So maybe your communications are changing in some way. The trine is easy flowing and harmonious. So maybe in your everyday situation, you are making more contacts and exchanges with your others and the people who you have established relationships with. Perhaps you are in your everyday life meeting more people that come into your life as friends or as partners. You know, meeting these people at this time, it could be very it could be very changeable, right? Because Pluto is about transformation, right? Maybe we change the way that we talk to people. Okay, that could also be one of those things. It's very short-lived. It's only like the first week of June. So the square, though, between Jupiter and Saturn, that's for a whole year, right? So Saturn is in our 4th house. Okay, 4th house is our home, our family. It is our roots. It's our private space. You know, nobody can just come into somebody's house. You have to be invited. You have to knock on the door. So it's a very private place. It's not isolating in the way that the 12th house is, but it is not seen by everyone. Okay, Saturn being there in that 4th house could point to more responsibility at home. It could point to being an authority at home. It could also be that you are having restrictions in your home, right, due to whatever. The square between Jupiter is that conflict between your home and your relationships. Maybe your responsibilities at home are limiting your relationships with others. You know, maybe your relationships with others is straining or putting a stress on your home life. Okay, so the working square is that conflict, that tension in which you need to adjust those areas of your life, adjusting your responsibilities at home so that you can have relationships outside of your home, adjusting your friendships or your relationships with others or your contractual agreements so that you can be responsible in your private home, right? It's something to think about. I'm looking forward to more friends and more communications. I could already tell that it's going to be more of a communicative time for me because I'm making more videos and I'm going to be going back to practice my astrology after a time of mourning. So I see it as an expansion of relations in a big way, but also having to balance that with your responsibilities at home as well. Capricorn rising. So Saturn rules your chart. It's your driving planet, right? And we have Jupiter in Gemini in the sixth house. Sixth house isn't one of those happy places. It's a place of work. It's a place of, mm, just having to do what you got to do type of place. It can be a place of illness and injury, but I don't like to be a downer like that. I'm just going to say it's a place where you really got to serve, okay? And sometimes in the work associated with the sixth house, there's no pay, okay? A lot of times, because it's like mission type work. And it's also like compassionate work, right? Because the sixth house is your daily routine, but it's also your health, okay? So doing things for other people because they need you. Like that's a big sixth house type of thing, giving your time freely. The sixth house is one of those places where you just work to work. It's not about pay, it's about the job, right? So the trine to Pluto occurs, Pluto's in the second house. Second house is a transformation of your things, your money, your possessions, your value, okay? So sixth house, second house, both working houses, okay? So maybe you're gaining value in yourself and in your life by the service that you provide to others. Maybe the services you provide are bringing you wealth, even though sixth isn't necessarily a place where you get rich. The second house is a place where you can invest, okay? So perhaps this is a time when you're investing your service and your work to benefit others, and it'll pay off sometime. Let's just hope. But the trine is short-lived, so that's like first week of July, or excuse me, June. But the square with Saturn is a year long. So Saturn is in Pisces in your third house. And the third house is communications, everyday environment. It's your immediate environment. It's the daily stuff, right? So that square with the sixth and the third, it's also about the third is communications. So you could have an inner tension or conflict when it comes to communicating your everyday needs to others, or being there daily, serving someone daily. Like that square, that tension between, giving of yourself freely, and then, but also needing, having such a busy, um, chaotic type of everyday, because like Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, a little chaotic, right? Saturn's not comfortable there. It's hard to have boundaries in the water, right? So emotional stuff may be trying to structure itself. So maybe you have to create boundaries of emotion when it comes to the services that you provide to other people. Like, don't give your life away just to serve someone else. The square always makes us stop and adjust ourselves. So there could be an adjustment that needs to be made between the services you provide for others and your own daily requirements. Aquarius rising. Saturn is your chart ruler, so it's your drive, right? And Saturn will be in the square with Jupiter for a year. Jupiter falls in your Gemini house, which is your fifth house. So that's good. It's like an expansion of your joy and your creativity. Possibly also, house of children. But anyway, I get excited because I want to be a grandma, and my kids get really sick of me explaining that to them, but I will continue to mention it every chance that I get. But so the fifth house is expanding. So your creative nature, your joy, your good times. It's the house of good fortune. So it's a yummy house. I love the fifth house. It's like the best house in a chart. So all of that is going to be growing and expanding your creative nature. The trine to Pluto, Pluto's in your first house of self. It's your image, it's your body, it's like your life in general. So Jupiter in a trine to Pluto, you can be expanding your own experience, your own image, your own person, your own life by having more joy, right? I'll tell you what, when people enjoy themselves, when people are happy, they change, right? We change. Joy changes us, okay? So there's a huge possibility that the first week of June is going to be a really nice time for you. The square between Jupiter and Saturn, now Saturn is in your second house, and a square between the second and the fifth, it can point to, really investing in our joy, spending money on good times. Maybe, with the square, there's that tension between these two. Maybe your joy is going to take, some of your savings. Maybe that vacation costs a little more than what you should be paying. Being even keeled and balanced in, what we spend and what we do. This is a possibility. An inner conflict between what we have versus what we want to create. Like we might have to take our money and our possession and transfer it to pay for our joy. You know what I mean? So, balancing out those two areas. Also don't save all your money up and never go on vacation. That too is a problem. So it could go either way. We're talking Jupiter's that expansive, sometimes too much factor, and Saturn is that restrictive, sometimes not enough factor. So like you have to make sure that you got enough, that you're balancing out your possession, your money versus your creative nature and your joy. Okay? And Pisces rising. So Jupiter is also your chart ruler. Jupiter rules Pisces in the traditional sense. And you have Jupiter and Gemini in the fourth house of home. Fourth house is your family. It's a private place. It's your root. Okay. Jupiter could be expanding your home life. Okay. Maybe you're adding on to your house, or maybe you're buying a new house, or maybe you have another family member, or maybe you have people moving in with you. Like whatever your domestic situation is, it's getting larger. Okay. The trine to Pluto. Pluto is situated in your 12th house. So maybe you have more time at home. Maybe you have more ability to have solitude at home. Maybe that's your safe space. Trine's usually harmonious, very easy type of energy. So being at home would necessarily give you more time to yourself. So first week of June, maybe you just veg out, redo your bedroom, do stuff in your own solitude and kind of like feel that privacy that you crave, right? Now the square to Saturn. Saturn is in your first house, so restrictions on the self. Maybe you lose a little weight. It's also possible that, and Saturn's in Pisces for 3 years. Like it's there for another like year and a half or so. Maybe a year, I'm not sure, really. I gotta double check, it's getting late. Anyway, it's gonna be there for a while though, and that square to Jupiter is like a year long. So the conflict, that inner tension between your home life and who you are as a person, you have to be the one to choose, if you want to isolate yourself, if you want to spend more time at home, if it's better for you, if you want to expand your family, then you have to expand as well, and you'll have to become more. Like when we have children, we become parents, so we become more. So there's definitely a working energy between who you are as a person versus your family at home and the responsibilities you have to, um, your home life and your family. So yeah, just remember, any time that you have Saturn is not necessary. Saturn in the first house isn't necessarily mean that you're going to restrict yourself. It just means perhaps that you have more responsibility to yourself. And it'll be, that square could point to the tension that comes with saying, no, I'm choosing myself over the family. Or, I have something I need to do for me. I'll do this for you, but I also have to do this for me. So, that's something to think about. Before I go, I wanted to just give you a couple of excerpts from some of the writers that I like about Jupiter in square to Saturn. So this is from Astro King, or Astrology King, excuse me. Love that website. It's the best. All the fixed stars, all the astrology. Love that website. He says, Jupiter square Saturn transit creates inner tension as we face criticism or limiting circumstances. Structures or long-held beliefs may break down, leaving you uncertain and unsure about the future. Any area of your life that has gotten out of control or is creating this tension will be subject to the strong hand of Saturn, and the square requires us to adjust that, so we'll have to change. You could experience financial hardship, so you must limit spending on luxury items or entertainment. A relationship on rocky ground may lead to a separation or significant shakeup. Events may force you to reassess previously held strong beliefs. Destructive behavior patterns, such as addiction, may end during this period. It's important for us to remember this because we have the ability to change, right? Everyone has the ability to change if you want. You have to desire change in order to get it, but you have the capacity for it. So the other excerpt that I wanted to read was from an archetypical book by Rin Butler called The Archetypical Universe, and he talks about Jupiter and Saturn. So the principles of Jupiter-Saturn would be virtues of maturity and balance, integrity and perspective, a regard for quality over quantity in life, step-by-step improvements, and solid reward earned over time. And we have that square for a year, so we got a whole bunch of time to do that. An understanding of positive sides of adversity and challenge, feelings of constriction and missed opportunities, a tendency towards pessimism to outweigh optimism, the possible negative results of too much prosperity or success. So having too much is also one of those issues with Jupiter and Saturn, but I think also not having enough. So, balancing that out. And hey, I hope you enjoyed my very first horoscope for the rising signs. I'm going to try to do this more, right? Jupiter is going into my 7th house, and that is where my Sun and Mercury are, so I really want to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And if you liked what I have here, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.